we are learning more about how Ukraine managed to fend off repeated Russian attempts to advance on Kyiv in the early days, of course, of the war. Matt Rivers takes us to a town near the capital that was really key in keeping Russian forces at bay.
Outgoing fire from a frozen foxhole, not far from the flaming pieces of an exploding armored vehicle, as the quiet still of a nighttime bunker is shattered by what the soldier says was a direct hit right nearby. This is what happened in the tiny town of Moshun, just northwest of Ukraine's capital city. It was here, as much as anywhere else, that the Battle of Kyiv was won. By early March, Russian forces had flooded south, Ukraine's seat of power in its sights. They'd arrived just west of Moshun, occupying that entire area. The Irpin River, the only thing between them and the town where Ukraine would make its stand.
Is it strange to just walk through this area now, when it's safe?
He says what's strange was being here when all hell broke loose. 3 Ukrainian soldiers who fought here took us around Moshun. Before the ground assault, they said relentless artillery rained down. There was little they could do but wait it out. Just listen to this video taken by a soldier.
So they dug this trench here just across the river from Russian positions, of course, to take cover from things like this. So this would be spent ordnance, a rocket fired from a Russian attack helicopter here on the Ukrainian position.
Thinking they'd soften the town, the Russians decided it was time to strike. With this bridge destroyed, they built a pontoon bridge here and started sending special forces troops across the river. Across the river, the Ukrainians waited, some seen here, ready to fight back. Street battles raged. Homes were shredded. Houses now with so many bullet holes, like freckles on a face. The Russians, some seen here, actually took part of the town, but that success would be short-lived, because the woods were up next. Moshun is surrounded by dense pine forest, the perfect area for Ukraine to stop and advance. Video shows Ukrainian troops lined up in neatly dug positions, and Russian troops would quickly come under heavy fire. Video shows the results: multiple dead Russian soldiers in the snow.
That body was found right there, and there were several other Russian soldiers that were killed right in this area, including this soldier whose body armor is still left behind. This was not artillery unit versus artillery unit. Here in these woods in this town, it was infantry versus infantry, close proximity fighting.
As sounds of explosions ripple around them, Ukrainian soldiers race toward an unseen enemy, carrying between them what is likely the kind of weapon that could do something like this. Ukrainian drones capture the destruction of Russian armor, sitting ducks on the lone road through the trees.
And here on the ground, you can still see the remnants of 2 destroyed armored personnel carriers. The body parts of the soldiers that were inside still litter this area. Ukrainian forces say some 500 Russian soldiers and 40 armored vehicles made their way into this part of the forest. And if they were able to continue and get through, it could have changed the tide of the entire war.
Moshun sits only about 3 miles from Kyiv's city limits and roughly 15 from the city's center. Ukrainian troops tell us had the Russians broke through, the thousands of Russian troops just across the river would have made an all-out push into Kyiv. But a fierce Ukrainian counterattack turned the battle around quickly, with soldiers going house to house, retaking the town, even destroying the pontoon bridge Russia had used to bring soldiers across. Ukrainian forces also stripping what they could from the better supplied Russian soldiers. He says they suffered heavy losses here, even though they dominated us in aircraft and drones and 10-to-1 in artillery. For these 3 soldiers, the victory in the Battle of Kyiv is something the world should have seen coming.
Should the rest of the world have been surprised?
Our army turned out to be one of the best in the world, and nobody was more surprised than the Russians, he said, adding one more thing in English.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Matt Rivers, CNN, Moshun, Ukraine.
Let's bring in former CIA field operative Daryl Blocker. He joins us now with more on this. And Daryl, Russia now says that it has full control of that crucial port city, Mariupol, which has been the scene of such destruction and slaughter. It was a key objective for the Kremlin. Do they really have it, may be the question. But what is the significance of Russia getting that? The Ukrainian government, by the way, says that their intelligence thinks that Russia might want to have a victory parade down those desolate, destroyed streets. But what's the significance if they have taken control of it?
Well, taking control of the city and taking control of the steel plant are two completely different things. I think it rings hollow. I think as long as there's fighting going on, no one can say that they have control one way or the other. And the idea of a parade rolling down the streets of a contested area just sounds like lunacy to me.
And so Russia also launching new missile strikes targeting this railway station and power plant near Lviv, near the Polish border. What was the purpose of these attacks, Daryl?
Well, I believe Mark has covered it really well. They've identified key nodes of resupply for the Ukrainian troops and the Ukrainian resistance folks that have come in, which always include telecommunications, always includes airfields, always includes transportation nodes. So it's not surprising. What's surprising is how close to the 4 EU/NATO members that share a border with Ukraine that's been going on.
Well, let me follow up on that if I could. So Russia is hitting resupply and critical supply areas in Ukraine. Well, the United States and NATO allies pouring weapons and supplies into Ukraine across the Polish border and the Slovakian border as well. I'm kind of wondering, are you surprised that Russia hasn't hit any of that, either on its way into Ukraine or once it gets there?
Well, I am surprised that an errant missile hasn't gone across one of the land borders. But Terry, you got to keep in mind that Ukraine shares a border with 7 nations. The land border is roughly the distance for Ukraine, Russia from the capital of Maine down to Miami. So just as a visual, and the 6 of the remaining nations that share a border, 5 of them voted against Russia, the invasion, and Belarus is the only one on the Russian side. Even Moldova, which is kind of, stayed out of the way, voted against the invasion. And then, of course, Poland, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia are the remaining that share a border with Ukraine.
Daryl, putting an end to this, and we've talked a lot about sanctions, and the sanctions have increased. Those supporting sanctions has expanded. Now the European Union's chief executive is proposing this complete ban, sort of a phase out of Russian oil. How much of an impact could this have on Russia's capacity to maintain their military, maintain this invasion, maintain taking ground?
I think the EU chief executive and the vote that they came up with today is a clear sign that the alliance is not starting to unravel. Now, Hungary and Slovakia are they have a heavier reliance on Russian oil than some of the other 25 remaining member states, but they clearly are on board, and it might take them longer than the remainder of this calendar year to squeeze Russian oil out of their stocks. But it's a great sign that the alliance remains intact and that they have a clear plan and path towards choking off Putin and those who support him.
Former senior CIA field operative Daryl Blocker. Always good to get your perspective. Thanks, Daryl.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
It was stated that the Ukrainian army hit an oil depot supplying fuel to the Russian army in the Donetsk region. The Ukrainian military has hit the oil depot in the city of Makiivka in the Donetsk region, where fuel was supplied to the Russian army. One person was killed and 2 others were injured as a result of the warehouse shooting, local sources said in a statement. As a result of the attack, it was learned that 4 tankers in the oil depot caught fire, and fire crews were continuing their firefighting efforts. There has been no official statement on the attack by the Ukrainian military. The Russian-Ukrainian War 15 Day. The moments when Russian tanks were hit by a cannon shot by the Ukrainian army were captured on cameras and shared on social media. It is unclear how this will affect the course of the war after Ukraine responds to Russia.
Into the war in Ukraine, Russia tonight intensifying its attacks, its troops entering the last stronghold in Mariupol, that steel plant. In fact, tonight, video posted by pro-Russian separatists showing explosions at the plant, that those troops have now breached the outer perimeter there. Video circulating online showing a missile strike on a bridge in the central city of Dnipro, and in Kharkiv, the second largest city where Ukraine's troops are making gains, Russian rockets slamming into an amusement park, including a children's playground. But of course, the concern in Mariupol are the civilians and the fighters still inside that plant. Our senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell in Ukraine again tonight.
Tonight, large explosions at the Azovstal steel plant, seen in undated video posted by pro-Russian separatists. Putin's troops breaking through today into the Mariupol factory, where Ukrainian fighters in the city are making a last stand. Up to 200 civilians are still believed to be trapped underground there. And in Avdiivka, an explosion near a bus stop killing at least 10 people, seen in video posted by Ukrainian officials. But in the northeast, Russia's invasion is starting to look more like a retreat. These gruesome images show dead Russian soldiers lying in the open as Ukrainian troops retake territory. Some bodies even arranged in the Z pattern that Russia uses as an insignia for its war. The Kremlin now increasingly resorting to missile and rocket attacks, the targets often indiscriminate. We were in Kharkiv when this happened yesterday. An amusement park in the city hit by at least 2 Russian rockets.
We're at the scene of one of the bombings inside Kharkiv. This is Gorky Park. This was a children's playground. You can see the Ferris wheel over there. There was a beer garden, a photo booth, even a child's playground. Luckily, there was no one playing there at the time, but it just tells you everything you need to know about whether or not the Russians are actually targeting anything or not. These are civilian sites that are being repeatedly hit across this city.
In response to Russia's brutality, the European Union tightening sanctions and proposing a total ban on Russian oil by the end of the year. If it passes, it could be a serious blow to Russia's economy and its war machine.
David, those battles raging in Mariupol. We spoke to someone from the far-right Azov battalion who's at the steel plant. What he says now is that surrender is not an option. So unless the Russians give them safe passage to leave the complex, which is highly unlikely, then they're going to have no choice but to stand and fight to the death. David?
Just incredible, the world watching now with civilians inside that plant. Ian, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
Why are the European Union considering such an extreme move as barring oil sales? Well, it's because nothing that has been done so far, the sanctions have not worked. President Putin is continuing with this war, and it is not letting up in any way. You mentioned the Azovstal plant. As we understand it, there are airstrikes and artillery strikes on that all day today, even though there are still, we think that there are civilians inside. I've just heard in the last few minutes of an attack on the railway station in Dnipro. Now, we think that at the moment what the Russians are doing is they're attacking infrastructure, supply lines, particularly the railways, because that is how the supplies of Western weapons are coming into this country. And that's one of the things that they're really worried about. Now, President Putin, what he's not worried about, it seems, are war crimes. There was a report today from the Associated Press saying that in March, when there was an airstrike on the theatre in Mariupol, an airstrike which just about destroyed that theatre, even though people were sheltering inside. As many as 600 civilians may have been there. Now, that's one of the reasons why Ukrainians are so angry and so determined to fight. As I discovered when I went to a military encampment, they are much buoyed up by the fact that they are now getting Western weaponry pretty much every day. The bright green of bud and leaf, the trilling of bird song. But actually, the significance of springtime in Ukraine is camouflage. Companies of Ukrainian soldiers can now camp in woods and forests while preparing for frontline missions. The coming of spring has made a big difference here. For a start, the leaves providing cover. Of course, that can benefit the other side as well. So more than that, it's the American and European weapons. They've been coming for about a month now, and the soldiers I've been talking to say that could be critical. Soldiers of the 80th Airborne Brigade of the Ukrainian Army show off their latest delivery of Javelin anti-tank weapons provided by the Americans. They also use lighter British anti-tank systems.
В последнее время, да, оно прибывает насыщенно и поставляет своевременно. Ну, есть чем немножко воювати, а так раніше було немножко слабо.
Момент в тому, що чим більше такої зброї, чим менше якби ризика для людини, тому що якби то, що у нас є з тих часів, ще скажімо, СССР, це такі засоби, яким треба досить близько наблизитись до противника, щоб його вразити. З такими засобами це все робиться із більш дальніх відстаней, тобто основна ціль, скажімо, це збереження життя людини. Дуже впливає таке озброєння.
The Ukrainians still have reliable old Soviet-era rifles, but it's the new Western weapons the Russians fear. So yesterday they used cruise missiles to hit the supply lines on which the armaments are entering Ukraine. Weaponry is one factor. Tactics are another. Serhiy was a lawyer before he became a soldier. What is the difference in the way you fight, the tactics you're using?
When we fight, we try to save our people, our weapons. They fight without all this stuff because they have huge number of people, huge number of weapons.
They don't mind losing people.
We don't have such option. Yeah.
Adjusting the sights. The troops have to make sure everything is right before setting off on spotting missions, from where they send coordinates for artillery or drone strikes. They feel a mixture of hatred and pity for their Russian adversaries, who they say retreat and then return without adapting or varying their tactics.
Вони тут просто м'ясо. Їх просто посилають на вбивство. Все. Вони не можуть нічого толком зробити.
Increasingly, this is a war of artillery, each side pounding the other. That allows tanks to move, but it also means civilians' lives have become hell as the cities of the east are hit. Overall, neither side is advancing much.
Ну, на даний момент поки що лінія стоїть на місці, от, не рухається. Вони, звичайно, намагаються просунутися вперед. Ну, у них є певна там мета, велика якась незрозуміла мета. От. Ну, а наша мета одна. Наша земля, нам нема куди діватися. Нам все одно потрібно відійти, вибити їх звідси, щоб ними тут навіть не пахло.
For those reared on Vietnam-era films, the camp has an apocalypse now feel, apart from the digestive biscuits, courtesy of the British. The soldiers say their aim is not just to resist, but to reconquer. Do you think you can actually take back parts of the Donbass that they took in 2014? Can you even advance that far?
I don't have any doubts about it. We have to take back our territories because this is our duty. These lands are part of Ukraine.
If motivation was all, the Ukrainians would prevail with ease, but they remain outnumbered and outgunned. The danger is a long, static war, of spring turning to summer, of fighting through autumn rain and winter snow, and still no decisive victory for either side. All we saw there were the lighter weapons, but the American howitzers, about 90 of them, that's long-range artillery, have arrived in recent days, as well as armed drones. The Russians are complaining that the West is stuffing Ukraine with weapons, and they do have a point there. But for people here, what worries them is the weaponry coming in from the other side. I spoke to the governor of Donetsk, Pavlo Kirilenko, and I asked him what was the greatest danger for the people here in Donetsk.
Найбільша небезпека – це те, що ворог обстрілює житлові райони, житлові будинки фактично всіх населених пунктів по Донецькій області. В незалежності тривають активні бойові дії в цих районах. Це прифронтові міста, чи це відносно віддалені від лінії фронту міста, все одно вони піддаються нищівним обстрілам і гинуть дуже велика кількість людей.
I know that your own family is complicated and that your parents and brother are on the other side, the Russian side. Tell me a little bit about that. It must be very difficult.
Я не спілкуюся з ними, і там, де на території з будь-ким з людей з анексованої, з окупованої території Донецької області, я не підтримую зв'язки з 2014 року.
But that must be quite painful.
Для мене держава і ці цінності державні, вони є на першому місці, і кожен робить свій вибір, але тим більше в такі скрутні часи цей вибір не може йти в розріз з державними інтересами. Ті, хто не підтримують і з ким я, як сказав, не підтримую, з тими, відповідно, я і не підтримую зв'язок. Звичайно, це нелегко, але моя концентрація зусиль – це на захисті інтересів держави в першу чергу.
There are other families like yours as well who have some people who are supporting Russia. Can this oblast ever come together again? Can these families ever come together again?
Я вважаю, що після 24 лютого лояльність у людини зі здоровим глуздом не може бути до Російської Федерації. Тому їм просто не буде міста на українській землі. І все. Ми це владнаємо після того, як ворог буде повержений і як він вижений, ми його виженемо з території України.
In your region, the region you govern, what do you want from the international community?
Зброя, зброя, зброя. Да. Літальна зброя – це важка артилерія, ствольна артилерія, бронетехніка. Я володію інформацією, наскільки яка к нам приходить, заходить, але швидше, більше і ефективніше. Після війни і перемоги ми не перейдемо до радянських стандартів, які ще лишалися, а вони будуть діяти. Стандарти НАТО, європейські цінності, і прошу не гаяти часу, а допомагати більше, тому що насправді цей ворог, він є у всього цивілізованого світу, у всіх країн Європейського Союзу, у всіх європейських країн. Ворог є єдиний, і якщо його не зупинять українці, він не зупиниться і в подальшому.